Hi listeners, I'm Lucille. I work for the 27th Region, or la 27e Région, which is a public transformation lab. Today we're going to talk about the place and the use of design of public policies. For this, I interviewed 3 designers or co-designers. There is Pandelle, which is a designer at la 27e Région, in charge of a program called Territoires en résidence, or Territories in Residences. There is Julien Defait, also designer at la 27e Région. He worked on a program of foresight called l'appointeuse, or the designator. And there is Rie Maktabi, who studies the collaborative design or co-design in Denmark, and who also worked for MindLab. She just finished an internship here at la 27e Région. She participated on a project which was a residency in the hospital of Marseille. So I wanted to hear them exchange about their profession, to learn about each lab and each profession, which are, as you're gonna see, quite different. Though the first question I asked them is not a little one. It was about defining their respective perception of design. I let you discover their reaction.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the courageous Rie to answer.
Design in general, or co-design, social design?
As you want.
I mean,
That's also the question.
I think that's actually, right there you kind of jump on what is the problem for us as designers, because design is such a big word and we very often use design for everything, like everyone could be a designer. And I experience that at MindLab all the time because my former boss, Christian Basin, he one morning he had this speech. He liked to have these speeches, and he said it was actually Annette who told me this, my other designer at MindLab, that he has said, I woke up this morning and I put on these clothes, and right there I was designing. And Annette, my colleague, she was really provocated about this because I don't know if that is design as the way I feel it's design is. And then, at MindLab, he kind of created this spirit, like everyone is a designer, even though you're an anthropologist or an ethnologist or a sociologist, they are designers at MindLab, where I find this sometimes troubling because I cannot be an anthropologist or an ethnologist or a sociologist.
Or a dentist.
Or a dentist. I'm only a designer, so I feel like designer is something that you sometimes throw up in the air and everyone can catch it. But actually, I feel like it's a shame because there's such a valuable term if you respect the term. So just right there, I think we talk about, I think you have to precise when you talk about design. Just don't use the word design, but co-design, social design, graphic design, what kind of design are we talking about?
That's the idea of this question.
Yes.
You were studying in different parts of the world, so perhaps you have different definition, different learning about design. So what kind of design are you practicing in your work, daily work?
So what would be your definition of your own discipline?
My discipline is co-design, is collaborative design. It was created 1 year ago, and before it was created, we had this long conversation at my school, my university, what we should call this. And we were bouncing between design anthropology and co-design. And we landed on co-design because we think that's what it's all about in this field that I'm studying. It's about collaboration. It's like talking with the users, talking with the people involved in the specific field. And without having this collaboration, you will not be able to do this kind of design that we do. For us, it's very much about the collaboration and the communication. It's not necessarily something that needs to end up in a tangible result, something that you produce and it's there and it will be there for, in the institution as a furniture or something like that. But it can also just be a way of doing things. I must say, very often, you take your experiences from your bachelor, which is at my team of co-designers. We are from furniture, graphic design, production design, and it's very often they they kind of, if they come from furniture design, they very often do an end result which is co-designed, but it ends up as a furniture. Or if you're a graphic designer, it's very often that you use that tool to create something graphical in the end, but with a co-creation.
Okay. And what's yours, sir?
Well, in France we didn't have this kind of specification, so we studied design, but in a very general way. That's the characteristic of our school. I think that in this school actually you don't choose between product design or interaction design or furniture design. You do design and then you just find your own definition of it within the project.
Like
so it's very hard to say to which kind of design we belong, because in a sense we did product design, we did space like interior architecture, we did graphics, we did service design. So the thing that we do now is a mix of all those practices and influences, but and then maybe to define it, I don't know, but the definition I would use for design is to say that we work on the interaction between someone and something, and that thing could be anything like a service or a policy or a product or a system, and we just try to work on the quality of this interaction. So that makes the definition of design very, very broad, but it makes it also specialized on the quality, the term of quality of use. So that would be my definition, I think.
Okay, and design is also about a methodology, I think, so it's like a process in time with different steps.
That's controversial.
We have invented, we learned more a way of thinking, and I think the designer is the person who manage a methodology to conception. And this is why it's not everybody couldn't be a designer, because we learned something very tangible, like sketches, prototypes.
You learn tools to manage a project.
Yeah. And we learned the thinking, the way of thinking. We can say that, an approach, and it's very specifically. It's very huge also.
It's very controversial because in our school we didn't have any courses about social design or service design. So basically we had to train each other within the project by choosing projects where the service could be an answer rather than a product. So most of the time the subject of a product would be like, I don't know, how to implement insect farms in the future city, and the answer could be a service or it could be a product. And we train by proposing social systems, social organizations or services. And basically we were a group of 15, 20 students interested in that field, that kind of process, or I don't know, and
so we focus on a way of thinking.
Yeah, but we didn't learn any methodology that would be design thinking properly, but that's why it's controversial to say that design thinking exists, because in my opinion it's just a new brand thing, a new fancy stuff that people invent. There is some logic in the fact of managing a project by design, because you do consultation and prototypes and do all those creative iterations. But could we call it a thinking? I don't know. I'm really not sure.
Okay. And when I asked you before this meeting, you give me a definition of design which were quite beautiful. It was in French, but I tried to translate it. It was to give to a shape a signification and a signification to a shape in a constrained landscape.
We give a form to the meaning and a meaning to the form. We have to know to draw, to be a designer, I think, because when we draw, we create. If we don't draw, it's not the same.
It's a communication between drawing and thinking.
We always work from a context or from. We start with the constraints, and then we try to shape solutions or propositions. And it's quite different from product design, for instance, where you could start with intuition or So the balance between constraints and intuition and creation and...
You mean the product designer starts with intuition?
Could.
Yeah, could, but very often it's the starts with the constraints.
So now, to be more precise, I asked them to present their work, and more specifically the project on which they were in charge. This presentation starts by Julien Defait.
I am in charge in foresight project. The project calls La Pointeuse, and we create a methodology. There are 2 workshops with carefully selected participants, researchers and civil servants, practitioners. With foresight project, we propose to imagine the future of administrations and the future of practices of civil servants. There are 2 workshops. The first one is with a very short team. During this workshop, we think about subjects. During 1 day and a half, we focus on strengths and weaknesses, and we create scenarios. At the end of this workshop, we have very rough scenarios, and afterwards, with a short team of designers, we take again these scenarios and we create very clear scenarios, and we focus on each step of scenarios to create pictures in 3D models to help people to imagine how we could build the future. And after that, we organize the second workshop with more people, and we present them scenarios and pictures, and we ask people to focus on a specific object or tools or methods or processes to make prototypes of it. Afterwards, we create prototypes, then we propose people of civil servants to test it. Afterwards, we organize a meeting to exchange of this experience. We formulate a collection of subjects, and the aim is to work on it for 2 or 3 years. The goal is to have a collection of scenarios, prototypes, and pictures.
So it's for 2 to 3 years of prototyping or implementing?
Prototyping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To test what could work.
Yeah.
And then with the focus of implementing in the end?
No.
It's forecasting.
So it's forecasting, so it's more about testing?
Yeah. We don't have the economic
leverage.
Yeah.
I think the main difference compared to what you said earlier, that you were talking about toolboxes for designing projects, and those are tools, administrative tools, but seen in a future perspective. So it's really like evaluation, but in the future, reporting in the future. It's not the same kind of tools that we use, like brainstorming tools or prototyping tools. That's not the same kind. It's like you take the everyday tools, like computers, softwares, processes, notes, meetings, hierarchy, etc. And we redesign those in a future perspective. Try to invent what will be the new, after the bureaucracy, the new administration.
Just to precise something, La Pointeuse focused on the near future. It tried to imagine the administration in 2 or 3 years. What is really interesting in La Pointeuse is the place of fiction. The fiction permits to imagine solutions. And I can make the link with the residents, because fiction is also very important in this program. The residency is a very immersive program with a team on the field, but it opens the possible, and those possible have to be imagined. That's the link. But I let Laura present you more precisely what is this program.
So a residence is a method that la 27e Région has launched in 2009. It's a program. We interrogate what is this dysfunctioning in a public equipment. So when we say a public equipment, it could be a physical place like a hospital, a school, a railway station. but it could also be a more intangible thing, like for instance an employment program or a health policy or an equipment that doesn't exist. And so the residence is a method of 3 weeks of immersion. Create a team of both people coming from the field of social sciences, or let's say observers, people who can understand the problems and question the problems, and from people coming from the creative industry, so designers mainly, but also graphic designers, videoists, photographers. And so we put those people together, so it's a bunch of 4 to 5 people, and then we go on the equipment and we stay there for 3 weeks, 3 times 1 week, with time to think in between and to maturate the project. And yeah, and the idea is that by spending time on the field, we try to define from the point of view of the users what is going wrong or well with this policy or with this equipment. So it's a lot of field research with the local users, but also local professionals, elected representatives, all the people involved in the engineering of the policy. And we jump very fast from this field research and constatation phase to a more creative phase where we try to propose solutions and to prototype them. And the idea is that we don't do observation and then proposition, but we do the two mixed. We use a project to make the field research more deep. The projects are just a way for people to react and to bring more insights and more intuitions. The residence is not a project where you can just in the end say, okay, we found the solution and that's it. It's more a process where you redefine what are the good questions or how to see the problem differently. So it's more a tool for the public partner to restart a project or to reconsider a project.
So now we're gonna explore how does work the MindLab with a presentation made by Rie of one of her projects. The most important difference is that they don't make program as in la 27e Région, but they imagine a project for any situation. It's not a methodology which is declared to any project. That's why we call it program avec la 27e Région, but they adapt the methodology in each case.
If I should explain a project, we did this project with the national jails. We got this note from the ministry telling us that 30% of the people under 18 who goes to prison go one more time in prison in their life, which is a lot. So they give us this information at MindLab, and then we have to find out why there's so many young kids go back to prison. We talk with the children who's just got the information that they're going to prison, and the kids who were out of prison and how are they handling the situation out of prison. So we do these maybe interviews for 2 or 3 hours. It can be workshops, kind of a field where you bring tools to communicate a little bit more creative than just doing an interview, but bring in some kind of, you call it, I guess, design tools. And by using these communication tools, we talk with the different people involved, like also the staff of the jail. So this goes on and on, these kind of small workshops with a team of 2 people from MindLab. It could be an ethnologist and a sociologist. By doing all these interviews, we create, of course, some pictures. So it's a lot about communication, not about writing reports, which I think is also very different from the 27 region, that we write a lot of reports to the decision makers.
The big difference, for what I understood, is that la 27e Région try to ask us a question, whereas the MindLab try to find solution. So it's not the same approach at all. So Rie, for you, what is the most important difference you noticed between the project of the MindLab and what you see in the Résidence of Marseille?
We don't prototype like 27 region do, where you can, when we were at the Résidence in Nord, we were creating real prototypes, we were building real things, and put it out and try out if it worked. At MindLab, we will, for now, we have not prioritized to use the time to do that. So it's more proposing prototypes written on paper, it's not built, but it's more described in a report, suggesting solutions or suggesting prototypes. And in this specific case, we found out that what was It was not the kids being in prison. It was not after, which was really, of course it was. Of course all this is really a difficult situation, but the most difficult situation we found out was that these kids actually can wait up to 3 months before they go to prison, meaning that you go for 3 months and you know you're going to prison, and it's like you get very embarrassed, you don't want to talk to your friends, and you also get embarrassed with your family, and your family is maybe mad at you, so you don't want to talk to them that much, so you start like not talking to your family. Do I know somebody who knows somebody who's in prison? Can I get in contact with this person to get to know what's going on in the prison? And so Maya found out that we need to focus on the first part, like before you even go to prison. So that's a typical project for MindLab, observing a lot, communicating a lot, and then suggesting for this organization of all the jails in Denmark to make a focus on the first part of the journey of these young kids. And so we proposed that in a report, and they answered back, that sounds like reasonable, let's talk more about that, and then we do some workshop with the decision makers.
And for this project, in prison, what is the role of a designer?
The role of the designer specific project was mostly giving the communication tools, meaning that very often I could do the communication tools at my desk, but I didn't have time to go with them, so they would just go with my tools. If I can do an analysis of that, it can be very challenging to create a tool and then give it to somebody else, and you don't know how they're going to use this tool. Sometimes they come back and say, wow, it went great. I mean, they totally understand the tool, and we had a good conversation. But sometimes they also come back and say, we couldn't use the tool, I mean, it didn't work. And sometimes I feel like if you were creating a tool and you went there and you talked with these people, it would be easier to provide the tool in the way you were thinking it should be used. So sometimes it's difficult to only be the provider, but not providing also the conversation.
It's very interesting because it's something we experienced a lot during La Transfo, the program that we finished before, which was really based on how to transfer skills of design and observation to civil servants. And actually we found out that in the middle of the program that we shouldn't try to transfer skills. We should try to transfer the will of building your own tools to achieve an objective, and so that they wouldn't use anymore the old processes and they will build their own new processes for observation or for. But I remember this very critical moment where we were working in Champagne-Ardenne, and at one point we were having a workshop together, and at one point we said, okay, but we need something to illustrate, we have lots of ideas, but we need something to illustrate. And we were on a rush, so we couldn't ask them to produce something because they didn't know how to, and we made photo montage. And that's when they understood that they wouldn't be never designers, because we had the knowledge of doing photo montage and they hadn't. And so they just said, okay, so eventually we are talking about my job, but with your tools, so they felt completely left, ejected from the whole process. And so at that point of the program, we stopped using really design tools because we were feeling that those tools were making them feeling far from the project rather than feeling part of it. And so we stopped using images or building things, and we used only their tools, like writing, doing schematics, things like that, and it went better. But it's really a critical thing. Does it work if you provide someone a tool?
That's a delicate question, in fact. Design tools are the attribute of a designer. So for people who are not used to manipulate them, it could be complicated. So how do you do to manage and construct tools that are easily used by users?
I think again at MindLab that works very different in order that we kind of have this kind of big toolbox of a lot of different brainstorming posters, or so we've done so many projects, so we always know now you're in the beginning, and then we have maybe 6 posters that we normally use, and then I try to together we kind of redesign it a little bit so it's more for this specific group of people. But it's very often like a toolbox like posters that we used several times for different projects and on different levels. And that's why I feel like the 27 region have so much more responsibility, because you are part of the team, you go out, you have the responsibility. And Annette at MindLab does that as well. She's also a project manager, so she's also in the field doing all this. But the other teams, they're asking me to provide design tools, and that's kind of based on this toolbox we've been building up so many years. So they know how to provide a good facilitation on these specific posters, but very often it's posters and post-its. It's to just richen the conversation a little bit. But if we use like more tangible objects, it could be for a workshop where we have like a moment where we do something more tangible or creative. But I guess the facilitation very often it's more about the communication and between the users and the observations.
And would you like to be more in the field, like not only in the building of the methodology, but also on the doing of the?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think it will need more time. I need not to be a student, because if you are involved like that in the project, and you need to have time to do that, and I don't have right now. It would be difficult for me to be very involved. But yes, of course, it would be great to have more foot in the field and a foot at home in making the methodology and the design tools. Definitely, and that's also what I experienced in 27 region, that it richened the conversation and the visual communication to do that.
Yeah, it's funny because I've never experienced your case. I've never experienced how it is to be a designer only of the tools, I don't know what it is every day, And but I think the more the experience that we have, that's because you know your tool very well, and then you're in a meeting, you're in the field, so you're in an interview or you're doing research, you can let the tools away, because you know it well, and so there is one point where the artifact doesn't become any necessary anymore, because you know it so well that you can improvise from it. And that's the point where it becomes really interesting, because you're not like stuck in the methodology. You can really take perspective on it and improvise new things, and that's when it becomes really powerful and meaningful.
But I think that's what the people working at MindLab are capable of doing, that because they know these tools very well. So they are capable of improvising and building on top of it. They're not like.
At what time should I do that, and what is it written on the program?
No, exactly. No, they're really used to improvise and use the tools as they want and as it feels like right at that specific moment. So and they very often have a quite exact idea like what kind of tool they want to bring out. So it's not like me only designing and they're only communicating. Like we are designing the tools that they're going out with together, because they know the users very well. And then they go out. So in many ways we say, as me as a part-time student, part-time designer in MindLab, my responsibility is it's more providing visual tools and not so much about the communication. Which of course I would love to be more part of it.
Laura, you said that when you know your field well, the mediation is more about the content than about the form of the tools. What do you mean?
I don't know if I can describe it, but yes, the content takes a priority, although the organization or the methodology. But it's more that you know what you want to do. You are in full possession of your intention, of what you want to achieve in this interaction, and so the tool becomes just one thing amongst others to achieve this, and that's when it becomes really, really interesting. I think that it's very hard to explain. So. But I experienced several times taking a lot of time building tools and not using them on the film. Like having a toolbox ready for, I remember this project, my diploma project, so before I launched in Région. It was in Dakar, in Senegal. So I was producing a lot of tools for social research. And in the end, we used half of them because the interaction was so intense and so interesting just in itself that I didn't need the rest of the tools. But the time I spent building the tools was time appropriating and understanding and conceptualizing what I wanted to do. So And that's what we try to do with Transfo, the civil servants in Transfo, by building their own tools. They interrogate what they want to do as civil servants. It's even more powerful to build tools than to use tools.
Now we're gonna talk about the different level of action of the lab. MindLab is really near the political level and make reports, for example. It helps with the decision, whereas la 27e Région tried to ask who could be in the decision board. So that's not the same situation. Are you agree with that?
No, but you're totally right. That's definitely the difference. At MindLab, we advise the ministries to how to create a policy, how to decide what the policy should be about. Like, if we want to make a new rule, like they ask MindLab, can you do some research in order to find out how can we make a policy that will meet the users? An example could be we were a part of the new school reform, which is just implemented last summer in Denmark. And they asked MindLab to be the voice of the children and the teachers. Of course, they also have organization for the teachers and the kids, of course, but MindLab was kind of, having this role of talking with the kids, talking with the teachers, trying to find out, like, how can we create a school reform that makes sense for them. And then they go back, and then I guess, yes, in that sense, we have this people working very strategically because they can speak the language of the politicians. They know how to speak, in a more strategic level. So you're right, we're quite close to the decision makers and the people making the policy. We've been eating lunch with them because we're in the same house. So yeah.
I think you spotted well what is the difference. The role of MindLab is more the role that could have future publiques, for instance. Lab future publiques within the SG map. That's exactly what they want to achieve. They are very far from being a MindLab, but that's what they had in mind when they launched the thing. So.
Rie would like to ask you a question. Does la 27e Région wants to become a governmental lab as a MindLab is?
Well, we could have done that, but our role is really to be like the outsider, challenging, giving ideas. But it's a tough. I think it's a very interesting position. I like it. I like it like that because we have a total freedom of speech and action, and we can also jump on all kinds of subjects of public action. So we don't have any constraints about that. The only constraint is money, and the time we spend on funding is huge. So that's the main problem, and that probably what will cause our decline, because at one point it will have to stop. But another scenario is that la 27e Région becomes an agency, like a private agency, providing advice, and that could also be another scenario. And we wouldn't lose the same thing either. So it's a tough question.
So the word comes out, freedom. Rie, you said to me that ministries are asking the MindLab to work on a subject. So I'm asking something. What is the amplitude of freedom that the MindLab have in this project?
We know that we are funded by these 3 ministries and this municipality. Make it, of course, also with the less freedom, because of course we have to meet the needs of our ministries and this municipality. It's meaning that if they have a specific wish, like, can you please work on this? It's very difficult for us to be like, no. Of course, we always negotiate. We're having this discussion all the time, like, what are the future projects? And in that sense, you can say that we can maybe influence a little bit, but at the same time, I guess we definitely don't have the freedom of jumping to one subject to another at the same way as you have. Definitely not. We have these, I think it's 20% off, which is not funded by anyone, which is free for MindLab to find the money. And they're often used for international affairs, like making speeches, making conferences, workshops, OECI, all that kind of thing. But very rarely we do like other projects, which is outside the needs of the government of this municipality.
And for you, what is the future of design in MindLab?
I'm the first one to be a master's student in co-design. I told them also that I find it challenging that everyone is a designer, because I don't think they are. And I think we have so many different skills which are amazing, but we have to also appreciate what skills we have and maybe separate them a little bit more in order to work better together. Hopefully my future is to come and work after my studies at MindLab and be respected as co-designer and be more in the field. But at the same time, it's a new practice. So I mean, it's beginning to also gain some kind of understanding at MindLab that they need people like you, me, who has these skills of being not only a designer but also have the design thinking.
Okay, that's a good transition for the next question. So I wanted to ask them what was the skill needed to be a good designer. And before the interview, Julien gave me 3 examples which were linked to each one. The first one was about the capacity to move to point of view. And the second skill was to be a good drawer. The draw is important to Julien because it makes a link between reality and ideas. And it's a way that need to be made in a sense and in another to construct a project. And the last skill for him was technical competencies to develop a project and to make it happen. So that's a lot already because each of these skills requires other skills, so it's already important. But I asked them if there is other one.
There is also the empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah. It's
very important.
That's a tricky one because it's very hard to measure.
Yeah.
But I would precise maybe in all fields it's more about professional empathy than empathy towards the users, because that one anthropologists can have. But what designer really needs to do is make the link between disciplines that are not used to work together, like create a dialogue between civil servants, anthropologists, decision makers. Try to put all those people in the same realm and give them common tools so that they can restart the collaboration. So that's what I feel that it's a big challenge of the designers, to make the pre-discipline go beyond like just a term that you add on a project, but a reality that people talk with the same language, the same tools, have the same vision, have the same intentions, and that's where design management can help also create a common framework for creativity.
Though the multidisciplinarity is also important in the project of the MindLab than it is in La 27e Région projects.
I think, it's definitely it's very important, but what I like about 27 Region is that you actually hire people that fit the specific project, meaning that if you go to Marseille, you hire a sociologist from Marseille, and we don't do that at MindLab. We have a team at MindLab with sociologists and ethnologists and all that. So, I mean, if we need an ethnologist, we take the one from the team, from MindLab team, we don't find somebody in the field. And I guess sometimes it could be actually very, very useful. What I experienced at La Résidence, that if you are with somebody who knows the field, it makes it so much easier. It's like you get all the social codes, you understand things much faster.
Yeah, it opens up the possibilities so much because, for instance, with Julie, it was for me the first collaboration with her, and I've never tried to work with the Ballade tool. That's her tool, working with people and make them talk. That's very far from design, but actually we found a way to make it design compatible. And it's so interesting that when you bring a new professional, it comes with its own culture and its own tools and its own methodology. And you take a little time to stigmatize a little bit, synchronize, and then afterwards it becomes so like an alchemy or something like that. So that's what I think is interesting with working with different people.
So now it's my last question. It's about the beauty. The beauty takes a big part in the designer culture. So I wanted to know what is the place of the beauty in the project, specifically in a social public design. How beautiful happens in a public service.
What is beautiful?
Life is beautiful.
The project is beautiful.
That's not the whole answer, of course, but sorry, our recorder didn't have any battery. Julien said that the beauty can be hidden in several places. It could exist in a shape, in a visual, but also in a meeting or in a conversation. Beauty is both a name and a tool. It's a name because he wants to produce something beautiful. And that could be when a service works, for example. But it's also a tool. When something is beautiful, it helps people to use it. For Laura, this need of beautiful could be quite dangerous. First of all, because it can change the nature of one object. When something is beautiful, it could be perceived as something which is no more linked with the administration. Furthermore, it could be a difficulty added on the administrative functionment. That's why she talks about some prototype made in a quick and dirty way. She makes a difference between a prototype, which doesn't need to be beautiful, but useful, and the final result. In this case, it has to be beautiful to be more accessible. So here finished this meeting between 3 designers. I don't know if it was a beautiful one, but at least it was an interesting one. Thanks for your attention.